So in this post I'm going to be doing my research summary. I think it would be a good idea if I went through them methodically just to make sure that I don't miss anything, and I can try and go through it quicker than it took me to make them. So starting off with the previous students' work. I actually really enjoyed doing this one. Although it wasn't exactly what I'd like to do, I think that it was worthwhile. Yeah, so I genuinely think it was worthwhile going through this previous student's work because it actually gave me a few ideas and it showed me what I should be doing in my, well, for example, our website, our digipack, the video itself, plus where we put all of our information. So our own website, apart from the band one. I think that it's actually shown me a little bit more for what I should be looking at. One thing which I really loved about this one is that it caught my eye with the neon lights, and that's originally why I went to choose this one. So I think that that highlighted to me that I really need to find a specific feature of something which I want to drill throughout the music video, whatever that may be. Okay, I also thought that she did a really good job of editing. So when it came to overlapping some of her posts together and then the way in which they all merged as well, it worked really well. I think that due to that and how it wasn't, I've never seen that sort before, it does make hers stand out better. So I think that, again, just highlighting the fact that you do need to find something quite special for your own music. So it also, her post also showed me that you do need to, it's better if you show a journey from beginning to end, just so then it makes it easier to follow and it's less random. Another idea which I did get from this is that she suggests you have a link or a bridge shot. Don't know why I did it like that, but yeah. You have a bridge shot from place to place. I quite like this, and I do think that it would make a little bit more sense than just like randomly being in your room and then you're at the beach. So I think it would just fill in a few patches which are necessary, but you don't need to waste loads of time on it. Yeah, finally, one thing which I did take from her website, not the band one, is that you can just do shorter videos and it can have the same impact. So yeah, I'm really going to try and carry on doing that, as it makes it a little bit more manageable for me, and then it also makes it more manageable to listen to and make sure that I'm not just waffling, really. Keeps you on track. Okay, so moving on to the real music video post. So like with the previous student work, they had a beginning and end which linked together quite nicely. I really do like this idea, and I think that it will be quite relatable for the audience if they can see what's going on. Yeah, I think it's a really good idea to start and end with the same situation. So when it comes to editing in this music video, I really like the way in which they mixed up the editing and how it wasn't just like a pan, then we have another, and then we have a tilt, then we have a zoom, and then we have another tilt, and they used a lot more variety, which meant that when they were mixing them up it wasn't as forced, and it did suit it quite well, to be fair. Another point which I picked up on the music video is that it's always good to include some natural noises in the video itself. This is again just to make it seem a little bit more real to the audience and less like that it is a music video, really, which has its perks. So for example, when somebody is on their phone, you could do the iPhone, I know this is stereotypical, but you could do the iPhone turning on noise, or something like that, just to really show that it is real. Yeah. So one thing which I did notice, and I quite like this idea, is the fact that, is when the artist or the actors have microphones on them. Obviously you'd have to put this quite discreetly, but I think that it really helps pick up some of their emotions if it's quite an expressive song, or if they're moving or doing anything like that. It could help to pick up the noises which the camera couldn't do if it was really far away. So I think that's a good thing. So another point is that when it comes to the editing, it does need to be unique, and it can't just all be the same as what you can just see online, really. Even if that includes like mashing up different ideas, what you've seen, it's a really good idea to do that. Yeah, I think that to do this A2, you have to look at a lot of music videos, and even just watching them you can pick up a few ideas and tips. I know that, for example, I've seen music videos in genres which I know for a fact that I won't be doing, but I've seen some editing in there which I'm like, oh, okay, that could work. So yeah. One thing which is really important actually is that all of the editing has to be on a beat. It doesn't have to be every single beat, but it does need to be continuously on the beat. This is because if it goes off and then you suddenly randomly chop it in the middle, although the audience won't be able to maybe pinpoint it, but they'll definitely hear that something's a little bit wrong, which isn't. Another thing which is really important is the clothing which the actors, the artist is wearing, as that you should help the audience with the genre cliches a little bit, but then that doesn't mean that you have to go full out stereotypical everything. It's also a good idea to make the visuals match the lyrics as well, just as a quick put in there. So moving on now to the Real Digipack. I think one of the main things is that you need to use photos from the same shoot, so you can't do 3 different photo shoots and have one image from each. This is again just so then when the audience sees it, they know that it actually is by that artist and from them, rather than being completely different album. It's also good if the album has a contrast, if that's with the CD or with the cover or with the wording. It does need some contrast somewhere just to really grab the audience's attention, or on the shelf really, or compared to anywhere else. Okay, so when it comes to the layout of the pages on the Digipack, it's always good to make sure that you don't have the space left for writing or anything in the same place on each picture. This is just so then it doesn't get boring, and it does shake it up a little bit for the audience. One key thing which I found here was that you don't overload the audience with text. It may seem like an obvious thing not to do, but I feel as though it's quite easy to fall into that trap. It's also to make sure that as you're not going to overload the audience with text, that you're picking your words really carefully and not wasting space effectively. Finally, it's really important to make sure that, to give it that professional finish, that the record label is on the back. For the band website, it's a really good idea if you have a simple layout. This will mean that when you add the images or the colour, it won't harshly contrast to what you've already got going on the website, which I think is a really good point, if I'm honest. It's also a good place to advertise the latest album for the artist on the front page, so then the audience has to go through it to then view the rest of the website. I really like this idea, and it's, again, as I mentioned when I was doing this post, it's like walking through the till at a supermarket and you're the little kid wanting everything off the shelf. So another really important thing is that there are plenty of inlinks on the website. This is just so then it makes it easier, so if the audience are a little bit lazy and they don't want to go all the way to the top all the time, they can just click on the inlink. Another good reason for this is that it gives a higher chance of the audience looking through the rest of the website if it's made easy. So it's definitely something to think about.
Okay, so I'm sorry about the change of camera. Okay, so we were just talking about the band website. Also really good that the audience has constant contact with the artists themselves. So by this I'm talking about how they will continuously show their subscriptions and their Facebook and Instagram and Spotify and everything like that. They'll always have them dotted around their website loads of times. I personally think that this is a really clever idea. Yeah, it works quite well, to be honest. So moving on to the next point, it's actually a really good way of allowing the audience to keep up to date with what the artist themselves is doing and what's coming out soon. Yeah, it's a really good idea by putting like a news feed almost about what they're doing. I really loved, because I looked at Ed Sheeran's, I really loved the way which he had a separate inlink to allow you to see the music videos which he's already done, the songs which he's already done. I thought that that was a really good touch, if I'm honest, and it's quite a nice way of linking his whole career up quite well. Obviously, the artist needs to show off their merchandise. This is quite typical, quite normal. It does allow the audience to see, for example, the stuff which they sell at concerts. You're allowed to buy that all year round, which is quite appealing for a lot of people. If I'm honest, what I really liked about Ed Sheeran's was that he had a lot of outlinks to charities. Although you don't have to do this on your website, I think that it's quite a nice touch. It just makes it a little bit more personal, the whole website, because you're able to see what sort of thing he likes as well as what the sort of... I think the key thing which I learned about his website is that you don't need to overwhelm the audience with the pictures and everything like that. There can just be small little inserts for the whole page. Yeah, I think that's quite an important thing to take from it. Moving on to the camera angles, page, blog, whatever. I think the key thing which I learned here is that you definitely need a variety of shots, as if you don't, it just becomes a little bit samey and a little bit boring and a little bit tiring to watch, if I'm honest. It's also good to have those normal shots, but you definitely need to break it up with other shots here and there. So moving on to the history of music videos page. So first of all, I think the key things from this is that it was created for the popular bands at the beginning when they were on tour and they couldn't show for Top of the Pops to start, and then it became MTV after that. So most popular videos nowadays are actually like either Spanish or Latino or even Japanese. So if you think about Gangnam Style, I know that was years and years ago, but that blew off. Then you got Despacito as well. All these massive songs are normally international, which is quite an interesting thing to think about. I think what is really important for a music video and the history behind it is that it needs to be catchy for the audience. If it's not, it's a little bit boring. There is no point of the audience obviously doesn't want to watch it, and that's not a good situation. So I feel as though that's a really important thing which you need to nail, otherwise the whole music video is going to be a little bit... So the evolution of the whole music video industry is actually going very quickly. If you think about when it started in 1970s, 1960s, sometime around then, compared to now, that is such a big difference, and it's quite interesting to see how far we've actually come from the beginning, which did start with the Beatles, So another reason why they're going to be going down in history. Another key time for the whole history thing was when Bob Dylan introduced doing something other than just performing in the music video. He had the flashcards up saying different words. I quite like this idea. It's different. Yeah. And finally, I think one of the key things for the history is that it has got such a wide future, from live streaming to the audience crowd funding. It's quite impressive and extensive how far the whole industry can go, really. Okay, so moving on to the music video theory. I just want to summarize the points here because I did spend a really long time going through all of them on the actual page. I feel as though if you want to go and look at them in detail, I'd just go over there. Anyway, so it all started with Andrew Goodwin, and I feel as though it's definitely a good idea to include at least 2 or 3, maybe even 4 of his ideas and theories which he had. So we had relating words to visuals, we had relating the visuals to music, then each genre characteristics, the voyeurism, the intertextual references, the notion of looking, and finally the demands of the record label. All of these are really good points, and I feel as though you can do them at the same time without overwhelming the audience, as I have seen it done, although I do get why it may seem a little bit OTT, should we just... So moving on to music and genre. A lot of artists, from what I've seen, do play up to the cliches of each of the genres. I think that is just to reassure to the audience that they are watching what they think they are and everything like that. So it's not really for the artists themselves, it's more for the audience to reassure them. So a lot of ideas do get copied from each other, so it's quite hard to find something like original, but if you find something original, that's the best thing to put in. But it's not, what I'm trying to say is it's not the end of the world if you have to copy ideas, but it's quite good if you do, and mashable. Moving on to music video styles. As I did mention before, one of the key things is that you can't cut on every single beat, otherwise it just gets a bit too regular for the audience and they'll be able to predict when it's going to come, and that's the worst thing that could happen in that scenario. So that's no. Another thing is that you do need to mix the normal and unique shots. This is again just so then the audience is a little bit more aware about what's going on and everything. So moving on to the director's post, all of them have a different style and perspective. That's the first thing which I want to talk about. I could go into that so detailed from what I've learned personally. I love the ones which I found because I felt as though they weren't all too similar and they weren't all the same either, and it did work quite well the way which it was all broken. I feel as though what all of the artists have done really well is they've focused in on the parts which they really like to do. They've focused in on what they like to do, and because of that it turns out really well, to be fair, and I feel as though that's definitely a good point to follow. So for the unique part of your video, the thing which is going to make it stand out, you need to really be thinking outside of the box. I know that's such a typical phrase to use, but it is so true. If you don't think outside the box, that's all I need to say. Just do it. Yeah, I personally tried to get a few ideas from watching and reading about what they've done. I think it was really interesting about Max Martin. He was my favourite one by far. But yeah, I've definitely got some ideas. So moving on to the labels and platforms, I thought it was really interesting actually, the fact that there are only, I think it was 3 or 4 major businesses, except obviously not the subsidiaries. I can't say the word. Obviously not the smaller businesses which the bigger ones own. But it was quite interesting to see that there were a lot more rules than I originally thought there was going to be. It's part of working in the business that. So it does really show how difficult it is to earn money, and that actually to get famous in music, especially when you have to pay off so much money to the labels to actually post their music, well, your music as the artist, is quite interesting. And what I thought was really good is that a lot of platforms nowadays are for free. For example, Vimeo, Vivo, YouTube. But then if you think about, for example, Apple, they make you pay for the videos, but why would you when you've got the free option? Finally, moving on to the available equipment, you can literally get anything. What I've learned is that we should be able to do any shot which we see, because we've got such a wide range of equipment, so it shouldn't hold us back, if that makes sense. The only thing is that you do need to know how to use it. I don't think that should be an issue for me, but if you don't know how to use it, it may be harder than you think. It's also really good having this wide availability or wide range of equipment, because it enables you to try out different shots. So I know that this was a really quick summary, but I feel as though it was important for me just to summarize the points, and then I'm not going to continue repeating myself as I have done in the posts.